Good morning, g'day, how you going? This is Roger Roadside saying hello. Hello. Oh, I feel like there's been a couple of days where things weren't too bad. Like as in there wasn't too much information coming out, too much noise or news coming out that was kind of, that sort of started the temperature of one's blood to rise. And I feel like this morning, there's been about 6 things that's come out that just seems absolutely incompetent to the highest sort of level from our government. And look, it's not just Labour. Okay, for me, in my eyes, I think, if you have a look at the Tories when they were in power, there were several instances and several people that got done for doing shady stuff, got done for seemingly not really having a handle on what it was that they were employed to do. And so it sort of begs the question that are all sort of politicians, especially ones in the current day, are they actually qualified to do the job that needs to be done? Are they capable of doing it? Yes or no? It's a simple question, yes or no. And based on the history of what's happened over the last 12 months, over the last 24 months, over the last 10 years, there seems to be a flurry of people that are incapable of doing the job. And look, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of if you were a prime minister of the country, or if you were a part of the governmental party that was in charge of the country, there are fundamentally 2 things that you are in charge of taking care of. And that is the country's economics. And you are also in charge of keeping in touch with the people and dealing with any grievances or issues or well, I suppose it's just those 2 really, that they may have. Anything that flags up as a potential problem or something where there is support needed or help needed, or perhaps we haven't addressed something, there needs to be that relationship between the people and politicians. Because without that, you then just, you do what Labour's doing at the moment, where they're sort of so out of touch with the people and what is actually a concern for us, that they're just making these changes or doing these things, and it just has absolutely zero impact. But then and then it also goes back to, obviously within a party that's employed to rule the country, you obviously have ministers that are in charge of certain things, and that's obviously divvied out by the Prime Minister, and he forms his sort of cohort and puts people in charge. And each one of those ministers, I would suspect, see, this is where I start to fall down a little bit, right? I would suspect that the best way to do something, like if you're in charge of transport, or if you're in charge of health, or if you're in charge of, the criminal and law side of the fence, I would suspect that in order to be a person that would be really good at being in charge of those sectors, that I would suspect that the best way to do that would be to have someone who is specialized in those industries, who perhaps has come from those industries, perhaps has been someone who has operated within those industries, done really, really well. They've now gone into politics and they've been a part of a party that's won power, and now they're the head of housing, or they're the head of education, or whatever the case may be. Does that make sense? I would assume that would be the best way to do something, but it's not like that. It's just, a party gets into power, and then it's just sort of like, oh, hands up, who wants to be the Minister of Education? Jono, do you want to do it? No. Okay, Sarah, do you want to give it? You get to go around various schools, and you get to have free meals at the tuck shop there. You can sort of, write that off as an expense if you want. You can use their gymnasiums if you want, maybe. You'd be happy to do that? Okay, yeah. George, would you like to do housing? Housing? Would you like to do housing? Again, you get to travel around a little bit, maybe see some new housing developments and stuff. Maybe see how many rooms we can subdivide certain houses into, so that we can get as many people into a house as possible. Maybe if you want to do that, you'd be happy to do that, George. Okay. It just seems moronic that this is the way that we govern the country. And look, it's not Labour's fault. It's not Sir Keir Starmer's fault that this is the way that it is. It just, to me, it seems senseless to have people in charge of certain areas that are not actually qualified to do the job that they're doing. And look, I won't even start with Starmer. Like, I mean, we only need to have a look at over the last 12 months or so where there's been specific examples where people have failed at their job, and not only just failed at their job, but done the wrong thing and been caught out doing the wrong thing. So it's not only just about doing a bad job. It's about the fact that they're not only doing that, they're going against the jobs. They're breaking the rules. You know, if you look at Angela Rayner, she left in September last year. She resigned after being found to have breached the ministerial code regarding stamp duty underpayment. She was the Minister for Housing, Tulip Siddiq. She resigned back in January last year following an investigation into links with the former corrupt Bangladeshi government. So she was found in regards to like financial corruption. She was the Treasury Minister, Andrew Gwynn. He was sacked in February and suspended from the party after leaked WhatsApp messages showed him being abusive towards constituents. All right, nothing to do with him being a health minister. But still, just idiotic things. Why would you do that? Why would you put something on WhatsApp? I mean, just being an idiot. Why would you do that? How would you be intelligent enough to go, oh, I'm just having a laugh with Greg and Sarah, right? I just said, oh, the people in my constituencies are such wankers and they smell funny and they've got hairy armpits. I'll just put that in the WhatsApp group. Total burn. Yeah, they laughed at it. Yeah. They laughed at it. Like, what? How moronic do you have to be to do the? I know these are, some of these. I mean, obviously, the connection with the financially corrupt Bangladeshi government is a high thing, and the underpayment of stamp duty is a high thing, and you could probably argue that saying hurty words over private WhatsApp messages about the constituents that you're employed to look after, you could probably argue that maybe that's not as important, but still. It's an example of the absolute sheer stupidity within the government. The government's supposed to be the high... Look, I don't understand why this doesn't make sense. To be a politician, to work in the government, you should have the highest level of morality. You should have the highest level of, following the rules. It'd be great if you had a really good level of intelligence and stuff like that, considering the job that you got to do. You're responsible for all of us. You're essentially the parents to this country. That's essentially what you are. If you work in the government, you're essentially the parents to this country. You're in charge of paying the bills. You're in charge of making sure that the house is in order. You're in charge of making sure that the backyard's clean and tidy. And as a kid, I can go out there and run around and, do the things. You're in charge of my education. You're in charge of, if I can, motivating me to get a job, so on and so forth. It's a really loose sort of example. I appreciate that. But essentially, that's what you're supposed to do. But look, that's not all. You had Vicky Foxcroft, who resigned in June last year from Labor in protest against the government's proposed cuts to disability payments. She resigned. They then did a U-turn and ended up not doing those cuts. Rashana Ali, the homelessness minister, resigned in August 2025, controversially over her role as a landlord and rent increases at her property. She basically kicked people out and put them on the streets. She was in charge of homelessness. And then what? We've got David Lammy, Calamity Lammy, who's in charge of the legal, the sort of law and prison side of the fence. Last week we had 2 criminals just walk out, a murderer and a rapist. And how many people have we lost over the last couple of months? Bloody hundreds. Oh no, that's all right. He's still working it out. He's just, he knows what he's doing. Oh, what's that? He wants to get rid of jewelries. That 12 months ago or 18 months ago or maybe a couple of years ago, he said jewelries were the most important thing going about. And now he just wants to get rid of them for most cases and just let a single judge who's potentially left-leaning, woke or anything like that, just let him make up a decision. Yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do that, bro. Let's just do that. I mean, it's just a fucking joke. And look, these are just examples of Labor's stuff-ups in the last 12 months, right? Again, they've broken another promise because they're about to raise the fuel levies. So everything's going to go up. It's not just fuel. For people that don't understand this, raising the fuel levy means that everything goes up, because now all the food that we eat, all the services or everything that you get delivered, all that sort of stuff, everything in this society will have to go up because fuel will go up. If fuel goes up, it means that all the transport, all that sort of stuff is more expensive. More expensive from the business side of the fence means that they need to charge 3 or 4 times more than that to cover their costs and make a profit. Because businesses, see, this is the thing. Businesses are different to a country, different to a government. Businesses don't give a shit about you. Businesses, have you ever seen, Tesco and Sainsbury's and all sort of stuff in all their adverts? Oh, it's because we care about the customer and this, that and the other. Oh, why are you putting your prices up then? Why are you putting them up again? Why are you putting them up again? Why has this gone up? Why has that gone up? Are you struggling? Are you just breaking even? Are you losing money? Oh, no. No, in your last annual report, you made multiple millions of pounds profit, multiple hundreds of millions of pounds profit. But you're still putting up prices to cover the cost of inflation and stuff like that. Why don't you just, like, if you actually care about your customers, why don't you just lower your prices a bit? Absorb some of that, rather than making 5 times the amount on this packet of crisps, why don't you just make 3 times the amount? You're still making 3 times the amount, but you're not charging me an extra 2 times the amount so that you can then have that extra £1 billion in your coffers. But look, I'm getting derailed a little bit. Look, this is about, am I wrong here? I just don't have any confidence in any politician, really. This is not just about Labour, because if you went back into the 14 years where Tories were in power, you would have multiple examples of politicians, of ministers, of prime ministers. I mean, geez, you have a look at Theresa May. I mean, she wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. But there's multiple examples of politicians and ministers that seem to get into this industry and get into this business that they're in, and they have no flipping idea about what it is or what it takes to do the job that they're doing. And look, am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me some politicians and some ministers that have done. Look, I'm sure there probably are a few people that have done it, but I mean overall, and I mean, from Sir Keir Starmer to Rishi Sunak to Theresa May to I heard on the radio this morning that the last 6 prime ministers have all left with having the lowest opinion of themselves, when they've polled, than their previous prime minister. So essentially, what that means, I think I've explained that poorly, but essentially, the last 6 prime ministers, every time they've left, they've been at the lowest polling than their previous. So it's basically just gone downhill in regards to our opinion of our prime ministers. If you have a look at the acceptance of our current prime minister, Keir Starmer, right? Apparently, in the opinion polls, he rates lower than the guy that was in charge of Venezuela. And that was a country that didn't, like, he wasn't even supposed to be in charge. He was corruptly put in, and the majority of the country hated him. But he polled with a higher acceptance level as Keir Starmer at the moment. That's where we're at. How hard is it to do this job? How hard is it to be Prime Minister of this country? How hard is it? Because it seems to be really hard. Because, and look, I hadn't got to Keir Starmer, right? Oh, man, this guy. Would you follow him into battle? Would you follow him into battle? If Keir Starmer said, we're taking over France now, we're all going to storm the beaches, let's go. Would you follow him into battle? No. Do you trust him? Do you have, like, when he says stuff, do you believe the things that he says? I would struggle for anyone to say that they do, based on the amount of U-turns that they've done. I would struggle, because he says one thing 1 minute, and then the next minute he says another thing. Or he says one thing, and then people go, "Oh, you're an idiot," and he goes, "Oh, no, sorry, no. What I've now decided to do is do the thing that you said to do because I've decided that, and I think it would be better to do that." He's just reactionary. It's a Keir Starmer. My personal opinion, I don't think he's the best public speaker. I don't think that he has a backbone. I don't think that he has any sort of ounce of gravitas. I don't have any confidence in him that he knows or that he's got any sort of connection with the general public. I don't believe, the pure fact that he thinks that we're doing well is just unbelievable, is mind-blowing to me. I don't know who he's speaking to or where he's getting that information from. But I believe that he's completely lost touch, if he ever was in touch at all with the general public. And I don't, other than, what has he done? He sold off the Chagos Islands for pittance. It's just... Oh, but they've got breakfast meals for kids, and they're taking kids out of poverty by abolishing the benefits. So now have as many kids as you want. We'll give you as much benefits as you need. Yep, don't worry about it. We'll give you as much benefits. That will be good. That will take kids out of poverty, won't it? Oh yeah, brilliant. No, because what we want to do is we want to foster the situation whereby people can go, actually, do you know what? I'm not going to work. I'm just going to pop out kids, because then I'll just get to sit at home, watch daytime TV. And if I just have another kid, I'll get an extra £100 a week. So I might as well just, like, if I pop out 5 kids, that's a pretty good wage. So it just doesn't make sense. Make it make sense to me. Specifically, if you've made it this far, listen, I appreciate if you made it this far. I know this is 18 minutes. And I know that I'm not driving around because I wanted to sort of communicate some of this stuff and be a bit prepared for it. So I know I appreciate that the visuals is quite static. But my point is this. In the comments, if you disagree with anything that I've said, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where this government and also the previous government, because again, this is not just about Labour. I'm only highlighting Labour because that's the party that we're under at the moment. I don't believe that the Tories are innocent. I don't believe that politicians in any of the other parties, Reform or the Sultana Haltana Mazana one or whatever, the Hakuna Matata one. I truly think that all politicians or at least a fair majority of them, are just incapable of actually doing the job that they're supposed to do. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know whether there's, perhaps there's some sort of course, and look, this is going to sound stupid, but maybe there's some sort of course or some sort of degree that people have to do in order to go into politics, so that people are specifically trained up and clued up and educated to know exactly what needs to happen if you get made minister of XYZ. What does that mean? What's going to be asked of you? What are the key things that you're going to need to do in order to be successful at that? All right, let's have a look at that and get trained in that. And all right, now what happens if you're minister of the automobile industry or transport? Sorry, whatever. What does that look like? So on and so forth. What happens if you're prime minister? Yeah, if you get to a point where you're prime minister, we're going to spend the next couple of months going over all the various things, the responsibilities. You have to do press conference. What happens if there's a massive breakout of disease and we need to lock down the country? What happens if there's a war? What happens if this, that, and the other? Why do we have to train up to become a dental nurse? Why do we have to do like 3 or 4 years of training to be a dental nurse, where you're basically sucking up saliva and blood from someone's mouth? I know dental nurses do a lot more than that. I was being a little bit facetious. I appreciate that. But my point is, why do we have to do 3 or 4 years of education for that? But where's the education for politicians, the people that actually run the country? I don't know. Get your thoughts down below. Look, am I wrong? Do you think that politicians are capable of doing the job that is at hand? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I think I'm on 37 subscribers, so I need 13 more to get to 50 before my birthday. So love you long time if you can do that. But yeah, appreciate anyone who's stayed this far. Love you long time, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Roger Roadside saying goodbye. Goodbye.